If Tears of the Kingdom opens with Zelda being either captured or killed, it will not just be disappointing, but it'll be a betrayal of the very themes established by Breath of the Wild. Hey folks, thanks for clicking on the video. The role that Zelda would play in the sequel to Breath of the Wild has always been a hotly discussed topic. It makes sense, doesn't it? This is maybe the most proactive Zelda we've ever gotten, aside from maybe Tetra, and by far the one who's gotten the most screen time. She spent nearly the entirety of Breath of the Wild trapped away doing battle with Ganon, with her story being told retroactively through memories. Finally, at the end of the game, she breaks free and seals Ganon away seemingly for good, and the true ending leaves us with a Zelda on the move, leaving with Link to solve problems that beset the kingdom, the first of which is a malfunctioning divine beast. So naturally, people were very curious what role this princess, given her freedom, would serve in the new game. Would she play a major role in the plot? Would she serve as a companion to Link, or perhaps a quest giver? The discussion has gone on for a while, and I myself made 2 videos on the topic. Then of course we got all of the trailers in which we see Zelda being separated from Link, seemingly falling into the abyss. Well, that definitely changes things. It still isn't over for the proactive Zelda community, and we coped with this by coming up with theories about how perhaps saving her just takes up the tutorial, or maybe being separated from Link means that there will be parts where we play as Princess Zelda directly navigating Hyrule Castle, and a million other things we tell ourselves to make us feel better. But it seems like the community at large is sort of in agreement that this likely isn't the case. Most people seem certain that Zelda is out of action at the very least, possibly captured, possibly even dead. I've heard theories that Zelda's death is what Aonuma meant when he talked about the game being even darker than Majora's Mask, with people bringing up the idea that perhaps Tears of the Kingdom could relate to the mourning underwent by Hyrule after the death of Princess Zelda, and maybe the plot of the game involves finding a way to resurrect her. And as much as I hate to admit it, I think they might be right. And I hate this. I hate it for plenty of reasons. I hate it because it's lame. It's a waste of the best Zelda we've ever had. Why give her a fancy new haircut just to hide her away for the entire game again? But the thing that really bothers me is that the choice to have Zelda captured or even killed isn't just lame, but it's also a betrayal. It's a betrayal to Zelda, and it's a betrayal to the themes established in the first Breath of the Wild. This isn't just a video where I whine about wanting a playable Zelda. I'm going to explain to you exactly what I mean when I say that this is a thematic and expectational betrayal. What is Breath of the Wild about? In a literary sense, what is the lesson Breath of the Wild is trying to teach us? What's the central message of Breath of the Wild? Well, I think there are a few different directions you could take this answer, but to me the most important message from Breath of the Wild's narrative is love, and the importance of being true to yourself. Not exactly cutting-edge stuff, but it appears in every aspect of the narrative. As Link, we play a man who quite literally has no idea who he is and goes on a quest to discover himself. This is portrayed through Link's amnesia and his quest to remember enough about himself to become the hero that he used to be. Well, no, that's not quite right. He goes on a quest to live up to the hero that he already is. Mechanically, this is portrayed through the Master Sword. At the beginning of his journey, Link is completely unable to pull the Master Sword out of the ground. It kills him if he tries. Why is this? Link is the exact same person who wielded the Master Sword 100 years before. His DNA is the same, his heart is just as well intentioned, and he's seemingly just as strong. If you pick up a Royal Claymore, it'll do just as much damage when you start the game as when you finish it. The reason he can't pick the Master Sword up is because he hasn't become his true self yet. He needs to live the life of a hero to get his old memories back. This occurs as Link undergoes trials and collects spirit orbs, which I believe to represent a healing of his spirit as he becomes his old self again, his old strength returning bit by bit. In the case of Link, we see a character discovering who they are as a central plot point. I think you see it with the champions as well, most of them at least. Mipha steps up to the plate to embrace her destiny as a champion even against the desire of her father. Urbosa strives to live up to the standards set by the great Gerudo leaders of old. Rivali is perhaps a little unconfident in his position as the hero of the Rito, and seeks to prove his competency to himself as much as anybody else. Even in the Descendants, you have Yunobo, who's as far from Daruk in courage as you can possibly get, but is still expected to grow closer to that ideal. Sidon, who must come to terms with who he is without his sister, and manages to become a beacon of relentless optimism despite the losses that he's suffered. Riju, who's fulfilling the mighty boots left behind by great chieftains like Urbosa, and is being forced to fill them far too young. The idea of expectations, be they ones forced onto us or the ones we willingly strive towards, is a central theme of Breath of the Wild. How do these characters perform under these expectations? How does it clash with who they are as a person? Does the true nature of their personhood contrast with the expectations of the role they're meant to fulfill? Breath of the Wild is not a particularly wordy game, so we don't explore these themes as deeply as perhaps they deserve, but they are undoubtedly a central point. How these themes of cultural, familial, and societal expectations intersect with the process of discovering who you are is a central conflict that can be found all throughout Breath of the Wild, and nowhere is it more present or thoroughly explored than in the case of Princess Zelda. Her entire storyline, characterization, character growth, all of it tightly orbits around the exploration of who we really are and who we want to be versus who we are expected to be. This is kind of obvious, right? Zelda has no choice in the kind of life she lives. She was born to the royal family, she inherited a connection to Hylia, and through no choice of her own, she became the only person capable of keeping Ganon sealed. From the very moment that King Rhoam and the previous Zelda decided to continue their lineage and create the next protector of Hyrule, Zelda's course in life was decided for her. And in a way that's true for her mother as well, who was likely born with the expectation that she would come into her powers when she reached of age, and would be capable of keeping Ganon at bay should he arise during her lifetime. And although we don't know much about Zelda's mother, we do know that she seemed to have had the aptitude for this. She seems to get her powers on her 17th birthday and had a relatively easy time of it. She also seems to have been fine with her lot in life. We don't specifically know if she loved being queen, but we at least know she didn't hate it enough for her feelings to become public record, or you'd expect someone like Urbosa, who was very close to her, to have mentioned that the queen was begrudging in her duties. The queen seemed to be somebody who perfectly fulfilled the societal expectations set out for her. And then of course we have Zelda. There's a good chance that the prior queen was likely taught to use her powers by her own mother, but since Zelda's mother died early, she had to learn how to awaken her powers on her own. The fact that Zelda's mother died didn't result in Zelda being given grace or people offering her more understanding. Rather, in Zelda's case, people doubled down. Now she was expected to still fulfill the same societal roles as before, but she also had to figure it out herself with no guidance. Add to that growing up in an age where Ganon is showing evidence of activity, and you have a tremendously difficult job for Zelda to undergo. Even the most apt incarnation of Zelda likely would have had issues awakening their powers with no guidance and under duress. Add to that the fact that Zelda quite obviously doesn't have either particular aptitude or passion towards the role of Shrine Maiden, and you get the central conflict of the game. Zelda is extremely talented, but she has a scholastic mind as opposed to a theological one. She has an immense amount of passion, but it's towards technology and biology and the sciences. If she was born in another time and to another family, Zelda might have been considered a great mind alongside the likes of Robbie and Pura. Her love for science and technology is on display time and time again. And of course, this is the central conflict. What Zelda wants to be and is predisposed to being versus what she's destined to be and expected to be. She wants to live the life of a scholastic, but she is expected to live the life of a monastic. And this fact is in constant push and pull within Zelda's heart. Zelda is two very different people when she's pursuing her scholastic passions, as opposed to her monastic expectations. When Zelda is out in the field chasing frogs or getting to experiment with ancient Sheikah technology, we see her thriving, moisturized in her lane. We see a Zelda who's excited about the future and eager to learn more. And when we're with Zelda while she's attempting to unlock her powers, we see a depressed and frustrated teenager who's being forced to do something she's just not good at. And it's not for lack of trying, despite claims to the contrary by her father. Zelda gives the exact same focus and attention to unlocking her powers as she does anything else. I would love to see King Rhoam be waist deep in ice cold water while freezing rain pours on top of him, and he's dressed in next to nothing, praying for hours at a statue with no guidance or idea of how abouts you're even supposed to be praying. Once he does that, he can tell me again that Zelda is just playing scholar and neglecting her duties. King Rhoam makes me furious, but that's a topic for another time. This clash between who she is and who she's meant to be hugely weighs on Princess Zelda. We see it completely shatter that self-confidence that's on display when she's doing science. She becomes a scared, self-doubting, self-hating wreck, Despite how hard she's trying, despite the amount she's suffering, she's making no progress in her pursuit to unlock her powers. And this fact is exacerbated by the fact that she has absolutely no support from the people she needs it from the most. Her father is, stern's not even the right word for it, he's downright cruel. I see people justify his actions all the time by talking about the burden placed on him, how he actually feels guilty about the way he treats Zelda. But I think that's mostly nonsense. I understand being stern and firm with Zelda, but Rome takes it to malicious, nasty levels. The poor girl isn't allowed to have a life. Anytime she shows interest in anything that isn't directly related to awakening her powers, Rome shuts her down and quite literally takes her toys away. He never comes with her on her journey to offer support and see with his own eyes whether or not his daughter is slacking. He just sends her out, and when that inevitably fails, he criticizes and patronizes and insults her. And the things he says go far past firm father territory. The way he tells Zelda that people in the village are gossiping about her failures and that she will inherit a throne of nothing is disgusting. I honestly don't understand how King Rome expected his daughter to just figure out how to awaken her powers with no guidance and no support. It wouldn't surprise me if his treatment of her directly played a role in stifling her powers, since it is love for another person that finally brings her powers to bear. And the game quite directly addresses this conflict between societal expectations versus personal ambitions in the relationship between Link and Zelda. Link is in the exact same position as Zelda. He was born with the spirit of the hero, and he didn't really have any say in the matter. He showed aptitude at a young age and was just sort of thrust into the world of knighthood, then rose through the ranks and was put in charge of protecting Princess Zelda. What could he say? No? Something tells me no wasn't really an option. So just like Zelda, he was thrust into a destiny he had no role in choosing. But the stark difference between Princess Zelda and Link is that his societal expectations perfectly aligned with his personal ambitions and attitude. Link is a born warrior, quite literally, and he thrives in his role as a knight and then champion, and then Princess Zelda's personal protector. He was born to be the champion to save Hyrule, and he fits that role perfectly. So when Zelda is forced to spend all her time around someone who's in the exact same situation as her, but is having the complete opposite results, it's completely understandable why she has a hostile reaction to him the way that she does. It drives me crazy when people talk about how whiny and rude she is in these scenes where she's being antagonistic towards Link, because it just shows that these people have zero sympathy and empathy. Imagine being forced to spend every waking hour with somebody who symbolizes your failure. And while a lot of this video is my personal analysis, the game is explicit about this point over and over and over again. Zelda sees her failure in Link's successes.
In the long distant past,
Gee, this is uplifting. She's making it sound like we already lost.
Wasn't this your idea? You're the one who wanted to designate the appointed knight with all the ceremonial pomp, grandeur, and nonsense we could muster. And if you ask me, the whole thing does seem to be overkill. I think I'm on the same page as the princess regarding this boy.
Oh, give it a rest. That boy is a living reminder of her own failures. Well, at least that's how the princess sees him. Ah, well, you certainly got here fast. I should have expected as much from the princess's own appointed knight. She was out on a survey all day today. Still as the sands now. So, spill it, boy. Have the two of you been getting along all right? It's okay, I know. Your silence speaks volumes. She gets frustrated every time she looks up and sees you carrying that sword on your back. It makes her feel like a failure when it comes to her own destiny. Don't worry, it's not like you carry blame in any of this.
So to recap, Breath of the Wild is a game about societal roles and expectations and how they align with a person's character and personal ambition. This is shown in the champions and their descendants, as well as Link and Zelda, with whom this idea is fully explored. And the way that this conflict between identity and expectation is resolved is so telling about what Breath of the Wild teaches us. Because as we all know, there isn't a happy ending, at least not at first. Zelda does not overcome her conflict. She fails to fulfill her societal expectations. She does not awaken her power in time to stop Ganon, and she suffers catastrophically as a result. Her father dies, her friends die, and the person closest to her basically dies. It seems that Breath of the Wild is making a firm statement here, that if you don't uphold the expectations society has for you, this is a bad thing and you will suffer. But I don't think that's entirely true, because Zelda's loss isn't shown in a punitive light. It's shown in a tragic one. We are clearly meant to sympathize with Zelda's failures and understand that it had very little to do with her personal weakness, and everything to do with the way that society went about forcing this role onto her. Perhaps if her father had been kinder to her, or if they had seen fit to take notes during the process of unlocking her power while her mother was alive, or did literally anything other than just send Zelda out on her own to figure things out, maybe things would have been different. Breath of the Wild seems to say that it was society that let Zelda down, and definitely not the other way around. And I think this point is emphasized when Zelda finally does unlock her power because of the way she unlocks it. It wasn't from a sense of duty or the result of her hard work. Her power unlocking had absolutely nothing to do with her role as Shrine Maiden or her societal expectations. It was wholly independent from the central conflict of the game. Zelda unlocks her powers in a spur-of-the-moment action when the person who cares for her most, the person who stood by her through all of her failure and didn't judge her for an instant, came under danger. Zelda's powers were not unlocked through hard work or hours of dedication. They were unlocked through love. They were unlocked when the person who she cared about the most came under threat. And in this way, I think that Breath of the Wild does definitively take a side on the central debate, even if it isn't through a happy ending. Because again, it wasn't the countless hours spent practicing that unlocked Zelda's powers, it was a sudden urgency to prevent harm from befalling the person who cares about her the most and who she cares about the most. Zelda unlocks her powers through her personhood rather than her societal roles. It was when she had already failed and there were no longer any expectations on her that she was finally able to awaken her powers and save Link. It was through something that she personally cared about through her own life experience rather than something thrust upon her that allowed her to finally fulfill her destiny. Breath of the Wild seems to say that all of the hours Zelda spent being forced to practice and fulfill a role that clashed with who she was as a person did nothing to awaken her powers. Rather, it was when she was finally able to give her full attention to something that she cared about that her powers finally awoke. Perhaps if she was allowed to pursue the life of a scholar, a life where she was allowed to be passionate and care about things, her powers would have awakened on their own. I think the entire theme of Breath of the Wild is masterfully summed up in the Silent Princess, which serves as a perfect metaphor for Princess Zelda. The Silent Princess is a lovely flower that was said to have been a favorite of the Princess of Hyrule. Once feared to have gone extinct, it has recently been spotted growing in the wild.
This one here is called the Silent Princess. It's a rare, endangered species. Despite our efforts, we can't get them to grow domestically yet. The princess can only thrive out here, in the wild. All that we can hope is that the species will be strong enough to prosper on its own.
The Silent Princess is Zelda. Just like her, it doesn't fare well under captivity. It yearns to be free and in the wild. Princess Zelda was forced into the role of a Shrine Maiden, even though she had no aptitude for it and no passion for it, and she faltered, she failed. But when she was allowed to be free and in the wild, in both spiritual and literal terms, that's when she thrived. She proliferated and bloomed and became the most stunning flower of them all. Like the Silent Princess, Princess Zelda is meant to be free, and for her, that means living the life of a scholar and exploring, taking a proactive stance. Remember at the beginning of the video how I mentioned that Breath of the Wild ends with Zelda and Link heading off to go solve a problem besetting one of the divine beasts? Look at the tone and the attitude with which Princess Zelda talks about dealing with that problem. She exudes a certain level of confidence. And compare that to when she's being forced to practice awakening her powers for hours every day.
We'll make our way to Zora's domain. Divine Beast Varuta. Looks like it's stopped working. Let's investigate the situation. Mifa's father. I believe he would like to hear more about her. The least we can do is visit him and offer him some closure. Although Ganon is gone for now, there is still so much more for us to do, and so many painful memories that we must bear. Curse you. I've spent every day of my life dedicated to praying. I've pleaded to the spirits tied to the ancient gods. And still the holy powers have proven deaf to my devotion. Please, just tell me. What is it? What's wrong with me?
Zelda is an extremely talented person when she's allowed to pursue the things she cares about, and it is important that she be allowed to do so. This seems to be the thesis statement of Zelda's character arc. You can't force people into a role that they have no desire to be in. And this is exactly why it feels like such a betrayal to even think about the possibility that Tears of the Kingdom might just see her end up in captivity or even killed again. The trailer opens up with Princess Zelda doing what she's best at, following her passion, the thing that Breath of the Wild spent its entire narrative extolling to us that she's meant to be doing, exploring and being in the wild, being allowed to bloom. And sure enough, her and Link stumble upon what seems to be a pretty dramatic find in Ganondorf's body, which seems to come to life and break apart on the floor, seeing Zelda fall possibly to captivity and potentially to her death. And I hate that so much. What kind of message does that send? The first game spent its entire runtime conveying the idea that Princess Zelda was meant to be free and to live the life of an explorer and a scholar, and now, when she's finally given the opportunity to do so, to live a competent life at something she's passionate about, during our first opportunity to see her pursue these passions, she's killed for it? Breath of the Wild spends so much time showing us the importance of Zelda having agency, and when she finally gets that agency, she's punished for it. She goes out to pursue her passions and is captured or killed by Ganondorf again. I hate that so much. It's a total betrayal of what I think to be a very beautifully established through line in Breath of the Wild, and I think it retroactively ruins the storyline a little bit. Like, does this mean that her father and everybody else who doubted her was correct about Zelda? Her place was in the castle praying in front of a statue as opposed to out in the world trying to do good? Since if she does go out to follow her passions, it seems as though the reward for her troubles is to just be captured or killed again. If this is true, Tears of the Kingdom seems to be saying that the Silent Princess won't bloom in captivity, but its fate in the wild is to simply be eaten by a deer passing by. Is there simply no place for Zelda at all in a monastic or scholastic life? And look, I'm not saying Princess Zelda needs to be the protagonist or anything like that. We already got our Zelda-centric storyline in Age of Calamity, and I thought it was quite good. But there's a huge gap between being the main character and being killed off as motivation. Obviously, this is just speculation. A million things could be the case, and it's not guaranteed that she will be killed or even captured. Perhaps they are only temporarily separated, and Zelda still plays a more active role in the story. She doesn't have to be side by side with Link the entire time, though I would love that, but I would also love to see something akin to the role Tetra played in Wind Waker, where she isn't captured, she just sort of does her own thing while Link does his own thing, and their paths occasionally converge. I think there's an opportunity to explore entirely new territory with Zelda, but I really worry they're just going to fall back on tradition and have Zelda get captured or killed, and in the process betray everything about her that was established in Breath of the Wild. What do you think? Do you agree with what I'm saying, or do you think I have no grounds for it? Am I worried about nothing, or am I just being too dramatic? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm really happy with this video. It's the first sort of video essay style video I've gotten to do since my body horror video for Halloween a couple of years ago. I feel very passionate about this topic, and I hope that came through. If you'd like to support me, you can leave a comment down below, go to Twitter and follow me there, come chat with me on Discord, or if you want to join the Subrosian Parade, you can join my Patreon. Stay safe out there, and don't let society pigeonhole you into a role. Find the people you care about and have them help you become the person you're always meant to be. Keep them at your side too, because it's dangerous to go alone.